Hey guys, welcome back. It's Ripe again, back with more Entitled People stories. In this video, my neighbor sued me for over $25,000 because my kid was playing football. Here is what happened. Let's dive right into the video. And the first one starts like this. Here in the UK, most of our gardens are not the largest. Mine is no exception to this, and it's never been a problem to myself or anyone around me. However, it's slightly tricky when paired up with my son's love for football, as there's not much space for him to kick a ball around. So basically, our solution to this was to get him a goal that covers about half of one of our fences, so there was minimal chance of the ball flying over into the next gardens over, and he can still get plenty of practice in. So it was years ago when we got the goal, and it's worked a treat. It doesn't touch the fence, though there isn't any annoying loud noise from when he scores either. And by the way, Ripe stars obviously, when OP here is talking about football, he actually means soccer, not the American football. Anyway, he has occasionally kicked it over the fence to the neighbors, but they don't mind at all, and thankfully have a son the same age as mine, so he often comes over and has a kick around too, so they don't really mind about the odd ball going here and there. However, a couple months ago, those neighbors decided to sell their house and up and move to another town. Within weeks, a new neighbor had moved in, as the house was in lovely condition, and I saw on the listing that they were not asking for all that much. The couple who moved in were elderly, which is fine, but as our neighborhood is very family oriented, with nearly every house having kids under 10, we could only hope they liked kids and the noise that came along with them. They didn't though. "Would you tell those kids to shut up?" the woman yelled on the very first day she arrived, shouting over the fence into my garden, where my son and his friend were playing a game of tag. I was not even sure that she was yelling over at us, it was just so bizarre and out of pocket, but for the sake of not causing any problems, I told the boys to quieten down. So the next day she came over with her husband. "Hello, you must be my new neighbors," I greeted with a smile, suddenly feeling bad for not being the one to go over and actually greet them. "Yeah, whatever. Now, we are under the impression that you have children," the man replied. "Yeah, I have a son and a daughter, lovely pair. I'm sure you can call them down from whatever they are doing if you would like to meet them," I replied. "No, that won't be necessary. We don't wish to ever see your kids," the man continued, staring at me as if I was gum on his shoe. "We just came over to hand you our schedule." "What?" I asked as I took the paper from them, reading the contents. It listed what times they woke up and went to bed, what times they had their meals or an afternoon snack, when they went out for each day of the week. "Now," the woman started, "your children must be quiet for the times allotted for our meals and of course when we go to bed. When we go out, they can be as loud as they want, but other than that, they must be quiet." I stared at her dumbfounded. That is ridiculous. "Not at all. I'm not saying they have to be silent. Just quiet." "For most of the day? In their own home?" I nearly laughed. "Yeah," the woman screeched, rolling her eyes. "Right, well, thanks for this. Let me know how well it goes down with the other neighbors." I shut the door, walked back inside, placing the paper down on the table to show my wife later. I couldn't believe the cheek of her and was half excited to hear how the other neighbors would react to such an insane demand. Later in the day, during our Majesty neighbor's lunchtime, my son was out in the garden kicking his ball around. He was not yelling or anything of the sort, but I'm sure the noise of his foot connecting with the ball made a sound. I know, what a crime. The couple came storming around, banging on my door with such force that I thought it might break under the weight of their pounds. "What did I say about your children and them being quiet?" the woman screamed the moment the door was open. "They are being quiet, what are you on about?" I asked with a sigh. "Your son is kicking a ball around in your backyard." "What? How dare he, right? He knows he must be as quiet as a dead man when you two are dining on your afternoon meal," I replied with wide eyes, placing a hand on my heart. "Don't you dare to mock my wife," the man growled, stepping forward and baring his teeth at me. "I do apologize, I will write you a letter with my condolences." I slammed the door in his face and walked back inside, ignoring their continued pounding on the door until they eventually walked back inside. My son continued playing football, but I decided to sit in the garden just in case they tried anything funny. Then the ball went over the fence and I realized this was gonna cause a war. Before I could stop him, I saw my son slip through a gap in the fence and run to collect it, something which was no bother to the last neighbors. "Assault!" I heard the man yell loud enough to scare away crows. My son looked scared, guilt on his face. I told him to go upstairs and not worry about it, not wanting him to get involved. "We are gonna sue you!" the man yelled once he had stormed over to my house, knocking on the door and all but opened it himself. "For what?" A ball accidentally going over your fence? I'm sorry that happened, but I'm sure it's not a big deal. You nearly hit my wife and then your son trespassed on my property, he yelled. Okay, for that I genuinely do apologize. My son very rarely hits the balls over the fence, his aim is usually very good. I don't care for your false apologies. We'll be taking you to court. The man stormed off over to his car and drove away. The next day, we did indeed receive a letter stating that we were being sued for £25,000 by our neighbors. I actually couldn't believe it. They were being serious? All this over a ball? I knew there was no way they would win the case, but it still annoyed me to no end. I showed my wife and she just laughed at it. I also posted it on the neighborhood Facebook group which we have, which my neighbors are not in, which started a whole thread about how much everyone disliked said new neighbors and the troubles they have caused. I wonder if they had a good relationship with anyone in the area, probably not with how they were acting with us. You know you won't win the case, I sighed as I answered the door to the couple. I think you'll find we will. We have camera footage of your son running into our garden to pick up the ball. Well, okay, and what good will that do to you? Proof that my son is a kid who just wanted to go and collect his ball? I really don't understand what's the matter with you. Have you never seen a kid before? They smirked and walked away, and the next time I saw them, it was in court. Well, Your Honor, we do have some evidence to bring to the stand, the woman stated with a smirk, handing over a USB with the video in it. This is the trespassing? You made it seem like an adult had trespassed and refused to leave. This is just a boy collecting his ball. The judge raised her eyebrow, clearly fed up already. Yes, well, it doesn't matter the age. He still trespassed, the woman yelled back. And this is the schedule you gave them, yes? She asked, holding up the paper I had handed over. Well, yes it is because… The judge raised her hand to silence them. Enough. This is enough proof that you don't believe your own case. You're here to waste my time and theirs and further whatever entitlement you think you have over them. The case is dismissed and you're ordered to pay their legal fees. That went down just as well as you would expect, with them kicking up a fuss and being all but dragged from the room. They moved out soon after the event, which we were all thankful for, and our new neighbors are much more welcoming and don't mind about the odd ball flying over the hedge. I do hope we never have such entitled neighbors again. And yeah, ripe stars, you know, in the past I've actually lived near a school, and oddly enough there were quite a few entitled neighbors who really had a problem with kids being loud. And well, guess what? For some reason, these houses near the school that were like directly next to it apparently were sort of cheap in the past to buy because, well, you guessed it, the kid noises can be quite loud, and apparently these stupid new neighbors apparently never thought about that. Anyway, the next one is titled The Oddie Man and the Police Interaction. Posted on r/ripe stories by user The Oddie Twin. And by the way, if you have stories to share from your own life that might be worth posting on Reddit, then please head over to r/ripe stories on Reddit, where you can post your own stories and I might read them in a video. Anyway, so I was reminded of this from a Reddit post, and while it didn't exactly match the prompt, it popped into my head and I wanted to tell it. There's a bit of lead-in necessary for it. To start, you need to understand that I'm a bit of a combat sport junkie, airsoft sword fighting, I've done many combat sports. This story comes from a time when I was not only a player but a referee in airsoft. The second thing you need to understand is where we were located. We were on the edge of a neighborhood, and so we frequently had kids standing across the street and watching. But let's not get ahead of things. The story starts out on a Friday night. Fridays were generally a night we had a lot of regular players, however, the players involved were some of the rare newbies that showed up. Of the 3 others, one was a kid. I don't believe he was even a teenager yet. The other 2 were in their early 20s. For those unfamiliar with airsoft, you're using replica firearms that fire 6mm plastic BBs. These 3 had been a pain the entire night, frequently breaking rules and being quite aggressive with younger players. One of the older refs had already warned them that they needed to quit acting up or we would throw them off the field. Now, this part comes from a third party, I didn't see it myself. During the last game of the evening, several players caught one of the 2 adults sticking the muzzle of their rental replicas through our safety net. They took aim and fired at kids that were playing across the road. The kids ran home and all the players on the field began yelling at the adults. They promptly gathered their things, returned their rentals and left. Skip forward, I'm doing my evening walk through as we are getting ready to shut things down for the night. As I'm opening the door into the staging area, I'm met with a police officer, but not just standing there, he's wearing a full vest. He's aiming a 12-gauge shotgun at my face. There was a moment of panic, but it passed quickly, and the officer just as quickly lowered the weapon. That is when I realized there's not just one officer, there are 9. They are all wearing tactical gear and carrying rifles and shotguns. It turns out the little kids ran home to tell their parents, and the parents called it in as a shots fired incident. Thankfully, several police officers are regular patrons of our field, which allowed them to realize some level of misunderstanding was taking place here. So to finish up the story as simply as possible, they did get caught, they did catch charges, I don't know what charges though. And the next one is titled, Boss and District Manager Mess With Me and Hurt Their Wallets. Posted by user AroundTheWorld13 on r/ripe stories. Boss and District Manager makes me quit, costs them big time. I'll start by saying that I never thought I would be on here, but after listening to r/Am I the Jerk and Ripe on YouTube, I thought it's time to tell my story. And by the way, Ripe Stars, that's definitely a good collection of Reddit channels you are watching there. However, personally, I would also add Dark Fluff to the trio. Anyway, for context, I, male 23, used to work at an electronics and entertainment store for 3 years and quit due to issues between workers and management. I had worked with a friend, male 36, at this place for a year or so. This friend was a good guy and great to hang out with when things were not busy. He would find a job at another company and we would keep in touch as he would come in and chat occasionally. He would become a manager at one of these stores a small distance away. Each time he would try to sway me to come in and work for him. I still liked what I was doing then and didn't think it was the right time to switch jobs. But again, due to management issues, I finally decided to quit and take up my friend's offer. For the remainder of this story, my friend will be referred to as Dumb Boss. After a week or so, I started this new job I will not name, but they sell mattresses and rhyme with Jeep Hummer. The first month of the job went very well as Dumb Boss trained me and another new employee, and the pay was very nice and the work was nice with small amounts of actual labor. By the second month, things were doing okay as Dumb Boss continued to train me and the other employees more, but it started to change as my training would be halted in the process every time before I got to even finish. He would continue to do this every single time I was being trained and stop it mid-session and start from scratch the next day I worked with him. I would never be able to even finish most of the day's training and only learn beginning things. I would say more about the training, but honestly, it would say too much about where I'm from. Anyway, a small time later I would get the news that my grandfather would pass and would wake up early to get the news. I would inform Dumb Boss later in the day, before my shift, of what had happened. My call would be very short as I told him of the passing and asked if there was any way I could call out that day. He would show some sympathy and tell me I could get the day, but after that he did not know. I would have to bring proof of the death, and I would have the obituary already to show. He would go on to tell me the next day I was in, as I would only have that day to grieve, that I would not be able to get any more days for my grandfather's death, as grandparents were not supposedly covered under bereavement as directed by him and Dumb District Manager. And by the way, he'll be relevant later. So on the day of my grandfather's funeral, I would have to work and Dumb Boss would have off. Me and the other employee I worked with, and is smarter than me when it comes to job things, talked about the situation of bereavement and who counted. She would ultimately look this information up for me and show me that grandparents were covered under bereavement and the information Dumb Boss and Dumb District Manager was not true. This made me upset and frustrated enough to punch holes in walls, but I didn't. I would call Dumb Boss and tell him that I was upset that the information he had given me was wrong and that I had missed my grandfather's funeral, something a person cannot go back and do again. He apologized, but looking back on it, that phone call he showed little remorse or care. The next time I worked with him, the same could be said in person. I would get no apology or communication from Dumb District Manager either about the situation, and this was strike number 1. Skipping some time to the next event, I and everyone else were to attend a meeting for the whole district at a store about 100 miles from where I lived. Dumb Boss would have his own the day after ours. I was paid for the travel and had arrived at the store and worked with everyone that had shown up. Enter Dumb District Manager, who was there for the meeting and mostly stayed on his computer the entire 8 hours we were all there. I thought everything went very well for my first meeting like this, as we were being trained better than at our own stores. The next shift I worked with Dumb Boss and thought it would be a decent day, but would not be. I greet him and get ready as the store hasn't opened yet, him telling me he has to talk with me once I've finished. We talk and he tells me that even though the meeting/training went well, dumb district manager and a couple of others had reported to dumb boss, as he had wanted them to, that I was not as good at the meeting as I thought. They had reported to him that I'd been overly fidgety, barely worked with others, and was dressed like a cartoon. Please keep in mind, I'm no top-notch person, I make mistakes and like many other people, no 100% good at a job. I do have issues with my legs that require them to move. I was nervous around people I had just met and did communicate with people in the training. Finally, I didn't understand why I'd be dressed like a cartoon when I was the same as everyone else, in a shirt and tie. We talked about it then and throughout the day, what went wrong and why. Even though I did my best, I was being treated like a negligent employee. This would go on, dumb boss saying things like this to me and telling me I'm not cut out for this and to just quit. This was strike number 2. Strike number 3 would happen 2 months or so later, when the store would have a massive sale and pressure was on me and the other employee under dumb boss, as he would press to make quotas that month, or we are faced to be chewed out by him following his chew out by dumb district manager. The final day of the sale, I would receive a nice old couple, and when finishing up with them, as I talked with them and the other employee talked with them, they had purchased an item and had left to wait for it to arrive. Dumb boss would walk over to me after they had left. Dumb boss would tell me that I had a choice after they had left. Either I leave for the rest of the day and take disciplinary action, and the second choice was to stay and lose the commission on the sale I helped the elderly couple with. Now, I didn't know what he was going on about, and he told me that because the couple I was working with had talked with the other employee, and she had left the floor and went to the back to collect herself, I would later find from her that she was just frustrated about the sale and trying to reach her quota, and not because of what dumb boss was bringing up. I decided, out of my own frustration and everything else that had been happening, to just take the rest of the day and come back the next shift refreshed and able to talk to dumb boss with calm and collect. I would return and talk with dumb boss, trying to keep a level head, and would almost lose it as he told me that because I left, he reported it to me being sent home to dumb district manager. After choosing the option to better help myself financially and leave and save my commission, I would be given the third, much later option of getting the commission taken away, thereby losing the pay from the lost hours and taking a disciplinary action regardless of what I did. This was the option that was forced on me after we talked, and I knew this was it. I was done and would put my notice in on the job about 2 weeks later and only need to give 1 week, as dumb boss wanted to hire a new replacement and train them before the holidays. He even had the audacity to set up an interview for my replacement right in front of me. I was done, like I said, but I was not going out without a bit of a fight. Something they had taught us throughout this job had been to say something if we see something. This was implied for any sort of ethics violations or issues that couldn't be brought up to management and be sent to an outside company they work with and their HR department. Remember that sale that we had at the store? Well, the sale was meant for friends and family only and no one else. Dumb district manager told everyone to use the sale on anyone, he didn't care who, and wanted the coupons we used gone. And if we didn't make the quota, chewing would happen. This was considered an ethical no-no, and dumb district manager and dumb boss didn't care as long as the coupons were gone. I would send in the ethics complaint stating what had been going on with the coupons. I know what some of you are thinking. I could have gotten dumb boss and dumb district manager on harassment, lies, etc., but unfortunately 2 things happened. So I'm not as smart to put things like the lies and harassment on paper and turn it into HR. The second is that I did send things to HR regarding what had been going on via the ethics and how I was being treated, but this went on deaf ears as dumb boss already told them crap to get out from this. Basically, I left the last day with not even as much as a goodbye or a good luck. I didn't need it though, as I had pretty much left my own goodbye for him and dumb district manager with the ethics complaint. I didn't hear much of what happened after I left, but after calling the other employee I worked with, did I get more info. It turns out the ethics complaint actually went somewhere. She told me that dumb boss and dumb district manager were under investigation and that they were both getting their own write-ups for what they had pulled and lost the commissions not just for one sale, but for the entirety of that month's commission, totaling around $15,000. If you cannot hurt them where it counts, just hurt their pocketbook. And yeah guys, if you cannot get enough of my content, please don't forget to check out my podcast by searching for Ripe Stories on all major podcast platforms such as Spotify, Apple or Google Podcasts. Furthermore, you can find bonus content by going to patreon.com/ripeyoutube or by clicking the join button here on YouTube. For a small monthly fee, you will get access to dozens and dozens of exclusive videos you won't find anywhere else. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again tomorrow.